Good evening, everyone. Welcome to TiE Future Series webinar. My name is Anastasia and I'm part of TiE family. While you're still joining the webinar, I'm happy to introduce our moderator of today. I'm going to briefly explain to you what the webinar is all about and what the TiE organization actually does. TiE is a global nonprofit organization focused on the development of entrepreneurs across various industries and at all stages, from the incubation to the more developed stage. Our mission is to foster entrepreneurship through mentorship, networking, education, funding, and incubation. With a focus on giving back to the community, we are here to support you through your business journey. This is our 29th webinar since the lockdown, and every time we bring knowledgeable experts to share valuable tips and advice with you, like today. Moving on to the session, today we're going to talk about the future of retail. As you know, this is a challenging time for many businesses, and COVID-19 forced many companies to adapt fast to the new reality, and this is what we're going to be discussing today. How retailers can transform their businesses successfully in the post-lockdown phase. Super exciting one for me, the use of technology and data analytics and how we can use it to engage customers and build a business. Of course, very important now in the new era, the importance of digital and social and how we can use this knowledge as well in order to interact with customers better and much more. For that, let me introduce Ramit, our amazing moderator for today, briefly about the Ramit's experience, which will be very useful during the session as well. Ramit heads Beta, a retail service company from Silicon Valley, with a mission to make retail accessible for all by bringing new and unique retail experience. He's the person who always looks outside the box, finding a new innovative approach and bringing value to any business model. Prior to Beta, he was the VP and head of MEA at HTC and worked closely with government entities and innovation partners, both locally and internationally, bringing new technology to the region never seen before. This sounds very interesting, and I'm super excited to welcome you, Ramit, and over to you for the introduction of the rest of our experts today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucia. How are you? I hope everybody is well. Welcome, to the Future of Retail webinar. Anastasia, you've done such an exciting introduction to me. I hope I'm able to do that for the panelists as well. So I'm extremely excited to be moderating this amazing panel. And being in experiential retail as well, most of my day goes in understanding this very question: where is retail heading? Who are going to be the major players? How do we expand? When's the right time to enter a new market? What sort of technology should we be using? Direct clienteling, InstaShop, virtual appointments, all of that, concierge services. And that's only the fun part. And it gets into more serious discussions as well, like justifying CapEx and P&L, and how do we scale without the same level of cash burn? So we're all in this, yet we still love it. Because all retailers here in the audience and on the panel, whether physical, digital, or hybrid, will agree with me in saying this, that this is a super exciting time, the business of experience. And this is exactly what we'll be talking about today. So today's session is divided into three different areas. The first part, we will have each speaker talk about the new normal and give their individual views on that subject. In the second part, it's going to be a panel Q&As, where I'm going to be directing certain questions to the panel, and we're going to have a discussion, and followed by 10 or 15-minute Q&As from the audience. So feel free to ask your questions at the bottom in the Q&A section, and we'll try and address as many questions as possible towards the end of the session. So, well, without further ado, I would like to welcome and introduce our awesome panelists for this evening. First, we have Saud Khoury, the Executive Director for Retail Asset Management of Aldar Properties. Saud heads the division strategy of shaping a retail portfolio of 600,000 square meters of gross leasable area in over 30 countries. During his vast experience, Saud has held several leadership positions at Aldar, and he also holds board positions at Yas Experience Hub, Khidma, and Aldar Hotels and Hospitalities. Driving innovation sits in the forefront of Saud's life. He's leading several initiatives to enhance the technological advancements for the company's retail assets, one of them being launching the first flexible workplace in a shopping mall in the Middle East. Personally, I can totally see how that will, how that only gets more relevant during these times. So welcome, Saud. Now, I would like to introduce Sharmila Murat. She's a Vice President, Department Stores and Off-Price for Shaloop Group. Sharmila currently heads Triano and Saks Fifth Avenue department stores, the Deal chain of luxury outlet stores, Triano.com, and the DealOutlet.com. Having held several leadership roles in the group for over 10 years, Sharmila now also serves on the Shaloop Group's Next, which is the group's junior board, the group's strategic committee, and the investment committee, and is also on the advisory board of Iftikhar, Shaloop Group's in-house. Sharmila also serves as a vice president and a founding member of the board of the French Chamber of Commerce of Abu Dhabi. Sharmila, welcome, and we all want to hear, all about all these amazing things the Shaloop Group is doing these days. A third panelist, I'm very pleased to introduce David McAdam. He's the CEO of Middle East Council of Shopping Centers and Retailers. With a career spanning 39 years in the retail industry, David is a regular contributor and popular voice around retail industry trends, commercial real estate, and residential property-related topics in several local and international publications. David is also regular on Dubai Eye 103.8 as an industry expert, a retail property market commentator, and as a guest. David has held other leadership roles with major shopping center development companies and advisory firms in the region. And great to have your extensive expertise on the subject, David. Welcome.
Thank you.
Our final panelist for the evening, I'm super happy to introduce Ishwar Chugani, CEO and MD of Giordano Middle East. Ishwar is also a member of the management committee of Giordano International in Hong Kong that currently operates over 2,200 stores in 30 countries. Before entering into this joint venture with Giordano, Ishwar set up Sindbad's Wonderland back in 1979. This was Middle East's first indoor family entertainment center, and he was also a founding member of the Middle East Council of Shopping Centers and the UAE Retail Business Group. Ishwar has received numerous recognition and awards around for his distinct management leadership style, and has also been named as one of the top 25 CEOs in the Middle East by Forbes magazine. Thank you, Ishwar, for joining, and welcome to you as well. Now, for the first section of the webinar, before we go into the panel questions, each speaker is going to take some time and talk about what the new normal is all about. We're all here to talk about the future, sure, but then the pandemic and with the COVID happening, there were a bunch of things that were done by retailers and companies around the world in dealing with the situation. And I think, and it's best to hear from the ones who've gone through it. And instead of me talking about them, I would let them introduce themselves via the initiatives they have taken in the last few months and weeks. So we can do it in the same order as I introduce the panelists. So the first presentation that I would like to put up is for Saud. Just give me a second. Saud, over to you.
Thank you, Ramit, for the introduction, and thank you very much for having me on this webinar. I hope everyone is doing well and safe, and everyone's families is doing well. So, before I go into brief on our portfolio within Altar and the retail, basically, as you said, we cover 600,000 square meters across 30 different properties here in Abu Dhabi, and Al Ain is segmented into 4 different categories. First, which is our flagship mall, Yas Mall on Yas Island. That represents a big chunk of the portfolio, around 220,000 square meters. The second category is city malls, which is represented in Abu Dhabi and Al Ain. We also have one in Abu Dhabi Plaza in Kazakhstan, which is more of a city and urban mall. Some of you may have heard of WTC, Al Jimmy Mall, and Shams Boutique on Reem Island, and Rimal Mall as well in Al Ain. The other 2 are dining destinations, which some of them include Marsa Batin, Al Bandar, Al Munira on Raha Beach. And the 4th segment is community and neighborhood malls. So each of these 4 different categories within our portfolio are handled differently and are reacting differently as well during the pandemic. So the way I want to start off by saying is, I think the current situation that we are all going through, the pandemic, has been with us in the past. And what I mean by that is I think retail and mall landlords were going through some sort of difficulties over the past. And I think what the pandemic has done is accelerated that fact, and there are two ways to take this opportunity. Either you take this to strengthen your relationships with your partners, adapt, transform, and evolve, innovate, look at different ways to look at safety and accelerate different partnerships with tenants and clients and experiences, or you would go through some difficult times moving forward if you don't have the leverage or growth strategy intact and in place. Some of the cool, fun stuff that we did. I mean, obviously, there are three different stages that we went through during the thing. The which was the pre-pandemic that we were coming through. During the pandemic, things went really quiet. There was there was a lot of uncertainty. People didn't know what was expected. We had to think out of the box to see how, and predict potential use cases that would happen to us in the future, and take really big decisions, within just the retail side and just strengthen that relationship that we have with everyone internally and externally. And then post is all about us, going back now to the new normal, which everyone is talking about. I think the most important thing, coming out of this and learning is safety, and I think it's very important for not only the malls, but the environment around us, and the way the country handles a situation, affects the people's mindsets and sentiments. So that's a very important factor to consider post, the pandemic. And I think Abu Dhabi is one of the leading cities in the world taking this pandemic extremely seriously, which you've seen several of these, measures that have been taken. Some examples are, every single mall tenant staff is being tested every 2 weeks. All the safety measures that are, have been announced by the government have been very, very closely monitored. And, all of these things have resulted in a strong comeback when we reopened our malls, because people felt very comfortable coming back to the shopping malls after that. And we've seen good results within a lot of our retail tenants in a lot of the categories. Obviously, there are some categories doing much better than the others. As you can see here in the presentation, you can see some pictures of some of the highlights that we've done to take, these measures, and one of them was the virtual customer service, where we came up with a quick idea to use iPads to interact with the customers, where there was no face-to-face interactions. We launched a We Shop for You service that basically allowed customers within the Abu Dhabi perimeter to buy stuff online through the WhatsApp chats. You guys should try that, and we're actually taking that to another level now and automating it. We've done a lot of safety measures, whether it's stickers on the floors to allow social distancing, temperature monitoring, geothermal cameras, all of these measures that we've taken within our malls. We've had a lot of digital initiatives that we're looking at, and the co-working space that you mentioned at the start. So these are just some of the examples that we have done to adapt, transform, and evolve. However, there's much more that I will take you through later on during the talks that we'll be going through.
Perfect. That's brilliant. I'm waiting for when can I go to Abu Dhabi and see some of these amazing initiatives that you've taken. That's great. Now, Sharmila, same question. Over to you.
Okay, thanks. First of all, thank you, Rami. Thank you for having me on the panel, and hope everybody is well. So if we go back to sort of backtrack to the beginning of this crisis, I think that for the Shalhoub Group, which is the leading partner of luxury across the Middle East, India, also operations now in Africa and Latin America. And within my business unit of department stores and off-price, the first question on all of our minds was how to keep our teams safe and how to keep our customers safe. And for us, it really started where we had teams in Milan and in Europe when the outbreak started there. So we felt it first there. So our first thing on our mind was how to keep everybody safe. And then, of course, that evolved quickly into how to operate through the uncertainty that Saud referenced, through the ever-changing crisis. And what we tried to stay focused on was communication, making sure that we were communicating clearly with our teams and with our customers and staying true to our values. And so when we talk about staying true to our values, one part of it as a group level was taking care of our people and also making sure that we continued to focus on the areas that we felt were very important, even pre-crisis. So that being our investments in data, in tech, in people, in loyalty, in CRM. And then within my business units, firstly with TiE, which is within Yas Mall in Abu Dhabi, what we tried to do during the lockdown, especially during periods when the store was closed, was try to really make sure that we were still reaching out to our customers in different ways. And one was that through continued partnerships with influencers, we had some really unique communication through our social media. We also enabled our teams the chance to sell through our social media. We have Instagram shopping, and also to have styling sessions for those who maybe were dressing for Zoom meetings or who had a newfound love of yoga or lounging about at home. We also found that our customers were very focused on wellness. And when that comes to beauty, that really, we saw an uptick in skincare. So we tried to really curate a lot of products around skincare, which you can see in this second, that was available online or through home shopping. We saw big pickups in brands like Aesop and LMS. We also converted our teams in store to be able to deliver to our customers at home or do home shopping. And then the other part on the last slide, which I just want to mention, is we have done a lot of events through TiE, through other stores within Shellhoop Group, in-person events, and we had to shift to online events. So we did live cooking sessions, we did live DJ sessions, we did live wellness sessions, both yoga and with mental health. And we found great engagement from our customer base who are really excited that we were providing more than just trying to sell products, which is always still important. If we switch over to the Saks business in Bahrain, the Saks Fifth Avenue Bahrain business doesn't have a traditional e-commerce business or a way to sell online. So we introduced something new. We introduced something called the Fashion and Beauty Concierge, and this was tied in through WhatsApp and also a styling application to give our teams in store the ability to sell products, to communicate, to continue those lines of communication through this difficult period. And I'm looking forward to talking more about all of these elements through the second part of the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharmila. And being a part of Shellhoop Group as well as a JV, I've seen some of these initiatives firsthand, and congratulations on the 900 days of transformation. I think that is fantastic, and was very happy to witness the last leg of it in the last year or so. So thank you very much for your input. Next we have David. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ramit, and thank you for having us on board the panel today. It's a pleasure to be here and speaking to your webinar, so thanks very much. The question that you've put forward to us is how will retail evolve in the Middle East? And I think the good news about all of this is that the Middle East generally are early adopters to what needs to be taken care of right away and to really embrace what is happening. And I think that we've seen that. The early adopters now, they're looking forward to figuring out what the new normals are and how they're merging. And I can only suggest this, that there are many new normals that will emerge coming downstream. And I think everyone on this panel would also agree that retail is and always has been about change and keeping current. And what has happened is that we have been forced into doing a lot more with a lot less and a lot in a compressed amount of time to keep things moving. So it's all about keeping abreast of the change and keeping current. So when I look at our organization, for instance, what have we done? Well, we set up our GVS, which are our Gregory Vogt School for Retail Professionals. So we weren't online before, and now we are online. And we've had great amount of students, and we've had a great amount of our instructors who have jumped in and helped us out, and it's working very nicely. We wouldn't have done that without this pressure that we had from the COVID. So, we have been very busy on doing that. The next thing I can suggest is that there's a supply chain flexibility that has been uncovered. And that is that before the supply chain wasn't that flexible. There is now, I believe, going to be a reduced number of SKUs, which are different products in each store. What sells? What's going to be important to the retailers to actually sell quickly and making that a priority for them. So I would say that's what the new normal will look like for many of the retailers. And that is to only import, bring onto the line the SKUs that are going to sell and make the most profit or the most turnover the right way. I'd say another thing that's come forward is that there is now an environmental consciousness. And I know that with the likes of Greta and others about environmental consciousness, it's now become to the fore. And I don't know why this is, except that people are becoming a lot more, I think, understanding that we're not alone in this whole planet and that everyone's in this thing together. So, but there's a great new shift, I would suggest, in environmental consciousness. The other thing that's been brought forward by Saud and his conversation about Aldar and what's going on is that there's been an acceleration in all aspects of life. And it's how people have chosen to really accommodate that acceleration and what they do. And you can ignore it, but I think you ignore this acceleration of change at your peril. So for instance, how would any of us been thinking about doing a YouTube Zoom sort of situation as we are now and talking to so many different people in a webinar? I think it's an amazing accomplishment that you've been able to do this, and thank you again for having me on it. I would say the last thing that is the new norm was that in the past, health and safety were important, but health and safety were not and have not been the number one reason why most of the retail environments were operating. So, but today I can tell you that people are very conscious of the pandemic. They're very conscious of their own health and safety. And I would suggest that the retail will evolve going forward in the Middle East and in the region and be much more sensitive to the health and safety to create a safe environment for people and also to create a social interaction that is going to bring us back together. And I think we're all waiting to come back together in ways that were similar to the old days, but I think that we're looking forward to doing it with a slightly different twist. So that's what I believe the new norm is going to look like. And I can give you more feedback as we go on, but that's what I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thanks, David, and you're very welcome to come on, and thank you for joining us on the panel. And you're right, it's a brand new normal where we are talking about the future, the present and the future over a video call, and with so many participants listening in. I especially like what you mentioned about consciousness. I couldn't agree more that all the players in the value chain, at least when it comes to retail, I completely agree, right? From the brand standpoint to the factories that are making the products and supply chain being aligned. I think there's a huge amount of consciousness that is required on all fronts in order to adapt and basically move on to the new normal. So thank you very much for your introduction on that. And last but not the least, Ishwar, same question.
Thank you, Ramit and TiE, for inviting me to be part of the panel. Now, coming back to the new normal, that's a big word. You know, like after 41 years as a retailer here, this is the first time ever where we had to make so many changes and adjustments. There are many new imperatives emerging for retailers in the post-new normal. For us, the transition from lockdown to the reopening of stores has actually been quite smooth, and we managed to get it done remotely. We had 2 months advance notice because our China operations and Asian operations had already been having to tackle COVID. And within a month of that, our chairman initiated daily communications between markets, between departments and shop visits. So that communication started, which was then communicated. We had daily communications with the team. Over here, the UAE government had the foresight to first focus on everyone's health and safety before taking the initiative to reopen businesses in a phased manner. Giordano, we were in regular contact with our colleagues across the globe who continue to share their experience in dealing with the situation then and even now. So our daily communication continues from across all levels in the company. In fact, what we do is we select a topic and each of the market heads has to talk around it in terms of rental negotiation, in terms of inventory, merchandise, customer habits. We had to look at things realistically and holistically as we noticed the dramatic shift in how people work, how they dress up, shop, socialize after staying at home for a period of time. COVID-19 has taught us the importance of shredding complexity in anything and everything to allow for faster decision making. This allowed us to be nimbler and flexible. We had to be able to bend with the situation and not snap against it. Consumer behavior and buying habits pre-COVID will be very different post-COVID. There has been and will be some pent-up demand in the market from consumers who were not able to spend during the lockdown, which has created some disposable income to make purchases today which perhaps otherwise may not have occurred. Most people are social animals and they have a need to see and be seen in public areas. With this in mind, we as retailers have to find ways to bring in the customers to our stores. Our priority now is to continue to communicate and reach out to our customers to curb their fears and update them on what we are doing to make their shopping experience safe and hassle-free as possible. As retailer, we have to be aware that today's consumers are more conscious of their responsibilities towards the environment and their community, just as what David mentioned. There is a greater importance placed in the social responsibilities of business. They not only ask what we are doing for them, but also what we are doing for society. We have had to rethink our supply chain to bring in more flexibility. In fact, COVID-19 hit us at the time when we brought in the most merchandise we would bring in a year, because in Saudi Arabia, 1 month's business was 4 months' business. And one of the biggest, if I had to look back and had to rethink of doing things again, we actually fast-track all the shipments to come and reach Saudi before Ramadan. And what's happened is we ended up with a lot more inventory, almost double than what we would keep at any given time. The only fortunate thing being a principal and being part of the brand, we were able then to move inventory globally. Now our supply chain has to be more flexible. After careful review and assessment, we had to reduce options and numbers of SKU, as many of the items that were good sellers before may not be good sellers moving forward post-COVID. Some industries, especially fashion like us, have now to focus more on seasonless stock, embracing the classic less is more approach. Investment in digital innovation and our online business will be a priority across all levels. One of the first things we learned as soon as we opened was from our Indonesian colleagues who, while closed, started personal selling apps and sending WhatsApp to all their customers. And because of that, people were ordering online. And we managed to replicate that within 48 hours and did that here while our stores were closed. And we managed some business, we managed to communicate with our customers. We learned so much from this pandemic that we were able to accomplish many possible positive changes in a few weeks that would have taken us years. A key area would be to look at how to improve the ways our team members can work remotely and introduce contactless solutions and payment methods in our stores, as well as how we can reach out to our customers remotely and virtually to enable them to continue shopping with us. And the final point is there is some silver lining to the current situation. This year, many residents will not be taking their annual holidays. In fact, we were looking at hotel rates within the Emirates, and it's crazy. It's already almost back to normal. Instead, people will go on a staycation locally, go to the malls, dine, spend their money here. We already noticed that sales in Abu Dhabi especially are much better than the other Emirates, as the residents who usually travel to the other Emirates now only have Abu Dhabi to shop in. So make the most of every opportunity is what somebody said, because in every crisis, there's always opportunities there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ishwar. And one thing that I completely agree with is the clienteling side of things. You mentioned that your team, reached out via WhatsApp and you almost felt closer to the consumer. And that's super ironical that in situations like these where you can't even see them, you actually tend to get closer with them. And I think this is what clienteling is all about. So great stuff. The next part of the discussion is going to be panelist question and answers. But before I do that, we have over 100 participants on this as audience in this call. And we ran a poll at the beginning of this presentation. So Cecily, can you share that poll results that can show us a bit of can show us a bit about a profile of the people who are listening to us?
We need people to vote now. We're running it now.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're running now. My bad. So the questions that we are asking is, what best suits the profile? I mean, are the audience more from the startup let's say size of the business? Are they from large businesses? Are they employees, freelancers, or students? We're also getting some information on what sector do they belong to. So let's just give this a few more seconds before I can talk about the poll results. I think we have it, and brilliant. So that's interesting. So we have 40% of the audience from the entrepreneur or startup community. That's brilliant, especially when you have industry experts here. I think your advice will go a really long way for all of us. We have 31% from small to large businesses, and 20% are employees in other companies. In terms of sector, we have 40% retail, not surprised. And like I said earlier, retail is not just retail, it's actually a business of experience, which is great to see our retail folks here. And then we have an almost equal split between manufacturing, e-commerce, innovation and technology. Again, all of them super relevant to the supply chain, all of them super relevant to what we are discussing at this point. So perfect. Thank you, Cecily, for doing that. Now, jumping on to the next section of the webinar, I'm going to be asking 4 questions addressed to each panelist. And then once the panelist and the speaker addresses it, others can feel free to jump in and give your thoughts on that particular topic. But let's spend around 5 minutes or so per question. So my first question is for David. And you kind of answered a bit of it in your introduction as well. But then one thing that I caught was, you said many new normals are emerging and many more are coming. And you have this amazing long experience in retail, and you've seen so many different developments right through when the whole era of smart computers came in, the smartphones came in, and you've seen shopping change, you've seen retail change. So if I were to ask you, what's the new normal, but if you were to give a specific example of or take one instance of what the new normal would look like in an ideal, let's say in either a shopping mall or a shopping center, let's say 5 years from now. And what is your prediction of sorts?
Okay, good question. Let me start by saying, first of all, that humans are social animals, and we've always been that way, and I don't believe we're going to change in the next 5 years. So what I would suggest, first of all, is that there will always be a demand to have great social interaction going forward. I think that's always part of who we are and will continue. What it'll look like in the next 5 years, that's a very good question. I will say, though, that what I have learned personally, anecdotally, and what I've heard from so many people is that the online shopping was rather underwhelming and probably a little disappointing in some cases. So I'm not saying that it's going away by any means, and I would suggest that it will not. However, what I would say is that there was some disappointment with many of the people that I've spoken to with the overall experience of buying something online. And I think that there's a great opportunity going forward for there to be a closer collaboration between the online and the bricks and mortar. And I think that there will be a lot tighter link between, say, people with their phones or how they conduct their shopping in the next 5 years. The other issue is that there has to be a much smoother way for the delivery to take place, because not only for groceries and other items that are consumable by the shoppers on a regular basis, but I will also say that there have been some disappointments coming from people ordering such mundane things as vacuum cleaners online or ordering other apparel items online. There's been some disappointment in the lag time and the delivery time. So those are the kinds of things I see where there can be some changes going forward that'll be a little bit better for us all as shopping. But I will leave this question by saying that humans are social animals, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And if you allow me, so we're getting some Q&As coming in, and one of the questions that have come up, I know we were supposed to do it towards the end, but it just feels so relevant, and I thought we could address this one as well. And Ishwar, feel free to answer that as well. We have a question that says, what is the view of panelists on video-based shopping, live streaming, and video-assisted sales? What should retailers do to adapt this? It took very well in China, but how do we see this evolving in the rest of the world?
Well, what we realize, it's a lot has to do with culture. It did very well in Indonesia. See, in most of the countries, like Indonesia, all the staff and most of the customers are local Indonesians. China, it's Chinese. It's a bit more challenging here because it's multicultural, multiracial. So what we got from it was not as much as the other markets. So that was a big challenge. And now we're looking at what else we can do in terms of improving. Our online has improved a lot. Logistics was the big key issue that had to be reviewed again, because we were looking at a business of almost 10 times what we were doing. So again, logistics, online, that's the way forward. But that's the answer to the question. It will take some time in this part of the world because of culture and differences.
I can add to that as well. I mean, we've tried that, right? And the challenge today is for a service is how to scale it. And that is the key to success. But if you start off small, you focus on the key priorities of that segment, focus on your key clients, try to make sure you get the right results from that, and then you can actually automate that process or whatever it is you're trying to do to scale in the future. So I think that's the biggest challenge today that you would see from trying to automate a video. Imagine having 20 million or customers a year, or divide that by 365, you'll have whatever number of thousands per day. How do you get this many videos to be attracted and used? I'm talking about shopping malls today, but even within retail, how do you scale that and try to keep the service level to a high level?
Maybe I'll jump in quickly on that one. During the lockdown, what I saw in my own businesses was that actually tools like photos and videos came in quite handy when they were partnered with one of our sales executives who had really a relationship of trust with that end consumer, because that's so critical to be able to give that advice and have that trust established. before sales are made. I think video is there, and I'd be interested if the person asking the question is also selling video technology. But what video, it's another way to enable that communication that's critical with clients. What we saw is that we tried Zoom in stores. We also, through social media, we have Insta stories, we have Snapchat. These are all forms where we have videos of product that communicate to our guests, and we make sales through those videos. But again, I think it comes down to the trust in the brand and the trust with the relationship with the sales executive and their clients.
All right. You've partially answered my question. That was it, which I was going to address to you now, is how do you see technology play a part? And the extension of that question, and maybe we can talk about that, and South can support you on that as well, is do you think this will also change the way we communicate to our customers? And if yes, how soon do you see that happening? And do we as retailers or landlords or anybody in retail, do we need to do any massive changes in our communication strategy in the near future?
Yeah, well, I think Saud and other people have talked about that this crisis accelerated trends and initiatives already happening. And I think what we've needed to do for a long time is make sure that first of all, we speak to our consumer in the right way. We speak to them in the right way in person. We speak to them in the right way in one-on-one communication, in the right tone of voice, as well as through every other touch point, be that our marketing, our social media strategy. So it's very important to know what your brand is, your brand vision and purpose, and be true to that when you have your voice with your consumer. But what we need to do is, and what this crisis has helped us do, is accelerate the technology to support our teams with how they communicate with that end consumer. So if I think a little bit about at Childhood Group, we launched our digital transformation about 3 years ago. And during the crisis, there was a joke floating around on my WhatsApp chats. I think 3 people forwarded it to me. And the joke was, who drove your company's digital transformation? A, your CEO, B, your CTO, or C, COVID-19. And with, love our CEO, love our CTO. They've worked so hard. They've done so much for our digital transformation, but truly COVID-19 gave it a huge push. It gave it a push to ensure that we're using technology to better serve our customers and better support our teams in store. And when we talk about how we need to use data and technology to better serve our customers, it's really in a couple different parts. So one part is how we know them. How do we know our customer? And that really comes down to using tools, the right CRM tool, having loyalty programs that both reward the consumer, but also allow us as retailers or as shopping malls know our consumer better, know more about who they are, what their name is, what their sizes are, their preference, their lifestyle, their family members, so we can better predict how to speak to them, how to predict product that they want to buy, and on down the line. When I think back to my early days shopping with my mother and my grandmother in the US, we had a favorite store we would go to, and there was always the same woman who worked there who knew everything about my mother and my grandmother, their sizes, their preferences. She knew what the other women were wearing so that we didn't wear the same things to the same events. And that was on a small scale. And in order to put that on a much larger scale, we have to have the right technology and tools. We also need better in-store service, and I'm very cognizant of all these pain points that people face when they come into stores. And one thing that we've tried to do is implement technology like styling apps, where we have iPads where we can put different products that are available in the store online and share that with our consumer, and that's worked quite well. We've also tried things like magic mirrors for clothing and for makeup. We have a skin consultation device that allows contactless skin consultation and advice. And hopefully soon we'll be bringing a beta concession into Triano, which I hope will also be a great addition to the store. But then we also need to think about the tools and technology for outside of the store. And that's really around having e-commerce, having home delivery and presentation, having contactless or remote pay, social commerce, and then of course everything related to WhatsApp and communicating through social media. David talked about improvement in supply chain, and this will also be critical to marry data with supply chain. I agree that there's probably, we can be so much more efficient in the type of product we make, we choose, we sell, and that's critical also as we are becoming more and more environmentally conscious. Unfortunately, the retail industry is one that's been a long-term polluter of this planet, and we need to start making changes in our own backyard. And then we need to eliminate our pain points. And those pain points in store really are around making sure that people don't wait unnecessarily. They don't wait for product to come from the back of house. They don't wait for checkout. I always dream of the Amazon Go store, of one day people will be able to just walk out without having to pay physically, that it can just all be electronic. So I think that there's a tremendous amount of tools and technology. What's important to do is to make sure that we use it effectively to solve our pain points and to better serve our consumer and not get caught up with gimmicks. I know Saud has done a lot of work on this front, so I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
Well, for me, I always look at the extremes. So there's one extreme end that would say, go all for digital and focus on that. And I think there's going to be an explosion of spend on digital transformation. Even the shawarma shop next door is doing a delivery online and services. So, there's going to be so much digital that I don't think you're going to handle. And as we said, everything is being accelerated. Things that were supposed to probably be 3 or 5 years down the line is happening today or soon and in the next 6 months. So the way I see it is, the other extreme is people will be so sick of digital after coming out of this as well. They don't want to look at a screen anymore. They want to go touch, feel, smell, try something on, enjoy, go have fun with their families outside. They're just, locked into this thing. So how do you come to a balanced approach is my view on both sides. And I think that's what is the key to success of both, the physical side and the digital side. Is a really well balanced look at this outcome.
Absolutely. I was one of the first few people, I think, who left home as soon as the curfew was lifted. So I couldn't agree more with you on the latter part of the discussion. But thank you very much for your views. Now, the next question is for Ishwar. And a lot of people are talking about changing, and every business is transforming, whether it's physical or hybrid or e-com, everything is changing in the near term and in the future. But how would you think, in your opinion, will organizations want to be known for while coming out of this? So you as a business owner, how do you want your organization to be known once
I guess we have to also see what we're doing for the public in terms of our health and safety, the way we do our manufacturing processes, the dyes that we use, more environment friendly. So we actually do an audit of the factories that we work with. We also want to be known as a company that don't really want to waste too much. And so we're very particular even with our own inventory and the amount of stuff that we do. Within our stores, we also try to keep whatever possible, like our lighting is all energy efficient, like LEDs, from our shopping bags to a lot of the products now that we're offering. We're now planning to even offer antibacterial and antiviral fabrics coming in, a lot of natural products. And overall, during this COVID, we also learned that the leaner you are, the more you can do, I've always been a firm believer that less is more. And in a flat organization, you're actually quicker and nimbler in reacting to the situation. So those are just a few points. I'm sure the other people, my colleagues at the panel can share additional things.
Sure. Sharmila, you wanna chime in on that?
Yeah, I think, how do companies want to be known? Well, I think firstly, what's going to be so critical is how we care for each other, how we care for our customers, how we care for our teams, and how we care for the environment. I think all of those, like Ishwar said, are going to be absolutely critical. And on that vein, what's so important is to be, how do we continue to communicate with our customers and make sure that we're listening to them so that we're responsive to their needs. And that's one thing actually we're doing right now. We're doing a series of focus groups with our consumers to rethink the offer within one of our stores within Triano for next year. Within the Shellhoop Group, the Shellhoop Group has had a long-standing focus on key CSR initiatives, really around the veins of education, around environment. We're a member of the UN Global Compact. And within Triano, this season, spring, summer 20, our season was around sustainability, and we tried to take a step forward in some key changes. We have now recycled shopping bags. We have gotten rid of single-use plastics. We have introduced key designers that are focused on sustainable and ethical practices. And in fact, we've also introduced a line of baby wear that has antibacterial fabric. So that's so interesting that Ishwar talked about that in his business as well. Interested to hear from the other panelists.
Great. So my next question is for Saud. We spoke a lot about how retail is adapting and how shopping centers, malls will be adapting to the situations and be prepared for the future. But if I were to focus on tourists, now that airlines are opening up and you'll see tourists coming into the UAE, how would you, as a landlord, and having so many different points of shopping centers and experiences, continue to deliver these experiences and the transformation that we're looking at with tourists, whether using different technologies to the tourists, even with all these restrictions in place due to COVID?
First of all, from looking at it from an Abu Dhabi perspective, 70% of our shoppers are residents of the city. So that's why the impact that we've seen during the pandemic is not as extreme as other cities who are dependent on tourists. While the remaining, 30% who are coming from abroad, how do you, attract them to come to the region is the key question. Obviously, the pandemic, situation has to settle down. There has to be an ease of restrictions that's going to be expected in the next couple of months. But I think there's two things that I would look at. One is loyalty, in terms of driving different loyalty programs and things that would attract the residents and the tourists to bring additional shoppers. But in terms of shopping, there's two types of shopping. One which we're seeing a lot recently, which is the need buying, groceries, furnitures, and things that keep you busy at home, kind of things. These are the categories that are doing extremely well. While I think later on is how do you focus on the wants of the people and create experiences that would attract island-wide things for tourists. So I think the tourist part would be a little bit more tricky to think, but these are times that we need to study, analyze, be patient, and see how the situation will calm down. But it's about coming together as a whole, not just as one thing. Working closer with our partners, our tenants, working closer with our neighbors, which we have theme parks, hotels, and all the other surrounding things that are happening in Abu Dhabi and the UAE to try to bring back, the tourist segment. So Dubai is at the forefront of doing that today. They've opened up. They've started, throwing really cool videos out there, and I've heard a lot of people come back, or even tourists actually fly in, recently who I've met, and they've said they've had a very smooth entry into the country. So these are all prerequisites into, then slowly bringing back the tourist sentiment into the country.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And David, do you want to comment on this as well?
Sorry, I was mute. I wanted to go back to the last question and what people would be expecting in the future in the next 5 years or so as well. And I think that, or the legacy that people want to have. And to answer that question, I would say that they want to have a trusting relationship and they want to have a more transparent, I guess, kind of understanding of the retail world and the retailers per se. I'm still on mute. Sorry, I didn't know I was on mute still. Are you there? Yes?
Yes, David, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. The first thing that I could suggest is going back to the last question, as what people want is the legacy downstream. And I would say that they would want more transparency. They want to have a trusting relationship with the retailers and have much more transparency in what's going on. Then you'll have to remind me of the next question that you were asking. What was the next question?
The next question was around tourists and how do you see landlords and shopping centers getting off for that?
Well, the tourism in UAE is very strong, and in the days gone by, it was up to 40% of the retail sales that were transacted with tourists. So it's a very important component of the retail sales, especially when the GDP of the country is 30% driven in retail, at least it was in the old days. So I would say that everyone is very proactive in the government roles in the UAE these days, particularly responding to making sure that it's a safe place to visit, making sure that everything is open, that the doors are open, that the airlines are, there's a new normal that they're all following. And I think all of these things are very, very important for everyone to understand from a tourist point of view that it's safe to come. They've made that very clear. And I think that'll be the way going forward.
All right, and these are the questions for the panel. And let's. I know we are running short of time, so I'll pick up a couple of questions very relevant to what we were talking about, David, earlier. And I know you said 5 years human beings are not going to change, but we have someone from the audience asking, what do you expect retail in 2030 to look like? As an urban consumer, what should you expect?
Well, I'll go back to it. The question is for me, I'll answer it in 2030. I mean, that's a long ways away. Who knows what it'll be by then? But I can still say that it's a social event. Shopping has always been a social event. It will, I think, continue to be in one way or another a social event. I'm sure there'll be a much greater integration between online and mobile phone connectivity and the real world. Probably artificial intelligence will play a lot of that. And also I'm thinking virtual reality will play a lot of role in that. That's about the best as I can guess.
I mean, for me, I would say for you to be able to predict the future, you have to currently live it and try it out, right? So things like, for example, if you have a car, try to sell your car, try Uber and Kareem for a while, and because these are things that are coming in the future. You'll be able to see what would be the outcomes of that in terms of healthcare. You know, this ring that I'm wearing, you know, has 23 sensors. It could calculate your body temperature and check the movements and your heart rate and all of that stuff. So there's going to be a lot of advancements in health. So that's going to play a big role, you know, moving forward. I feel the retail side, as David was mentioning, AI, AR, all of these are trendy words today, but they would be coming more to life, I think, in the next, you know, couple of years. Maybe in 2030, you'll have, you know, robots and other things, and maybe Amazon Go kind of, you know, malls that you can go and pick up your stuff. So all of these trendy words that you are hearing today would potentially come to reality. But also at the same time, in my view, I mean, if there's too much of that, you want to go live in the ocean somewhere with your shorts on the beach with nothing and just focus on, you know, other, you know, basic things. So there has to be both of those worlds always intact.
That's an amazing thought. And if I can just chime in on the virtual reality piece, because so I launched Vive, HTC Vive, the first VR headset, first all immersive VR headset in the region. This is exactly what we were trying to solve. We were saying it's going to solve retail, it's going to solve all these different other experiences, which is true. And I'm quite hopeful that some sort of a mixed reality headset, now whether they're going to look like a big headset on your head or it's going to look like a pair of glasses or even contact lenses. But I do believe a lot of the ecosystem has to come together. Content has to be there. There has to be willingness. There has to be investment from all in the entire value chain to make that happen. I can't certainly wait to see something like that happen. But anyway, our last question for the evening is, we saw a lot of rules and new regulations specifically around return and exchange policies, both in retail and e-com transaction, where it was not allowed for quite a long period, so you could not return your goods. Do you think this is going to change, or do you think this needs to be addressed in a bigger manner? Because it almost feels like the audience is asking, this is a hassle for the consumer.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Sharada.
happy to jump into that. I think as a retailer, this was a huge pain point, and it truly gave us physical pain that we couldn't serve the customer to the level that we always have, but we had to be very careful with rules and regulations to make sure that health and safety was the priority. So wherever possible, we tried to be very accommodating, but really this return issue was to ensure health and safety, and now I believe that's all been resolved. So if there's something specific, please do share it with us.
All right, thank you, Sharmila. This pretty much brings us to the end, right on time. So in conclusion, I just want to thank you, all the panelists, for their time and for your exceptional views on the future of retail. I think this itself is a beginning of so many different dimensions to consider, and when it comes to retail, or let's say the future of experience or the future of consumption. I think there could be so many different webinars and discussions that we can have around these different topics. And please stay tuned to the TiE channel to know more. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of other great webinars around the same discussion point. And in my opinion, my closing line on retail, I think it was and it will remain to be of huge importance. Retail, that is retail experience. Although how we experience it might change rapidly in the future. So I think I'm super excited to be a part of this and continue driving more experiences in the retail front. Yeah, and for last closing points, there's going to be a poll for all the audience. So feel free to just attend that poll. And that's it from all of us. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the evening. And
thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wishing you all the best, and hope you come out of this all stronger than ever.